Hi, welcome to Shifting Perspectives. One moment, let me get my tech all put up here. This is Anna Imagination with a Healing Garden, and sink into my worlds with me, and I will show you what I see. I had a wonderful day yesterday. A friend who I've been friends with for about 3 years reached out to me, and we went out for coffee. And I did my whole, yay, social experiment. So I put him through my social studies. And when I was done, I do this every single time. I walk into a situation with a social situation, and my first impression is this was a mistake. And my first impression is always, I don't think I enjoy debate. I think that's it, really. I don't think I enjoy debate. Debate is the process of trying to persuade other people to your perspective. I don't enjoy it. I don't enjoy it at all. And I think this is my issue. Whenever I meet somebody or talk to somebody, they take on, whoa, all right, I'm going to do it. In philosophy, there is a branch called logic and formal argument. It was, of all the topics in philosophy, this was my favorite. Can you tell? Being a logician is what I am first and foremost. Like, of all the things that I am, people are like, oh, she's a psychologist. I say I'm a philosopher. Really? I'm a logician. That is what I am. I sniff out illogical or logical fallacy. That is what I do. I locate things that don't make logical sense and I make sense of them. I have to. Logic is my obsession. That's why I studied this for 30 years. So I am first and foremost a logician, and I'm a philosopher. That's really it. Those are my two top tiers: logician, philosopher, and then I get into my oral historian parts. So in logic and formal argument and debate, there is the debate part of it. The debate part is when you use conversation and logic to persuade somebody over to your perspective. Now, I don't like this. I have never enjoyed this. And I thought it was trauma related, but the trauma's gone and I'm not feeling any triggers and I'm still not enjoying it. And I just found a logical fallacy with debate. And this is interesting. I'm like, wow, I found a logical fallacy with debate. So here is why I have a problem with debate. It is run off of the base understanding that there is one external truth. And I don't believe that, because what we are is our own personal truth, and all we can do is perceive an external world through our own personal truth, which means to convince somebody to come over to my perspective is actually to violate them, disrespect them, and probably cause them logical harm. Logical harm result in cognitive dissonance, result in mental illness. Suddenly, the idea of convincing someone to come over to my perspective isn't something I want to do. I don't want you to come into my perspective. I would rather you preserve your own perspective. Now, I would love to hear your perspective. And if you want to hear mine, here are my podcast videos. But I don't want you to believe my perspective if it isn't for you. That would hurt you in such a way, just like being told I have to believe your perspective would hurt me. Perspectives are logical. They should be. Here's the problem with a logical truth. A logical truth is built up off of a series of data points. Now, this is the problem. I wouldn't say it's the problem. It's the kind of big issue that no one really acknowledges, which leads to the problem. A truth for any one person, their perspective, is 100% built up on all of the little events that have occurred in their life. This is from the way you were taught how to tie your shoes, the way you were taught how to swim, the way your parents were. Every little event over the course of your lifetime went into your experience, into your database, your cognitive core, to process the data so that you now have an intricate web of logic built up around your comprehension of the world. Only you can determine if something outside fits into this network. And when you form your opinion or your anything, you are forming something that 100% reflects your personal experience. Now, in order for someone to understand your point, they have to understand your history. This is something that I ran into last night. I was on luncheon and we were talking. It was first very shallow of a conversation where we were exchanging perspectives. And then he starts telling me what my perspective should be. And I became very defensive. I'm like, no, 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 no. We entered debate and we were very hostile with each other until we triggered each other. And then we both stopped. We brought it down. I don't know. I wasn't triggered. He explained he was triggered, but I felt I was just defensive, like, this is mine. You have no idea how much I worked for this perspective. And then later we were walking and we were going back over it. And it was amazing because we had this moment where I was explaining to him, look, this happened at one point to me. And I said, if you want me to believe what you believe, he was basically criticizing me for being over optimistic. And I said, don't attack my optimism. It keeps me alive. It keeps me going. It keeps me going forward. When I lose my optimism, bad shit happens to me. I can't live without it. It's literally my survival anchor into this world. So he left it all. He's like, oh. So I explained to him what happened to me once. I will not repeat the story. I don't like the story. And he said, oh, I loved it. He said, can I touch your hand? I want to comfort you. He asked for consent. I said no. And then after about 2 minutes, I felt the need and the desire to be comforted. And I could tell he was still very uncomfortable not being able to comfort me. So I said yes. So he took my hand and he then reciprocity. He gave me his story, which was very similar to my experience. Emotional. Remember what I said. So you have your common perspective. You have a breakdown of misunderstanding. You come down to the emotions. You reconnect through sadness and pain. And then you return to the main perspective, the shared perspective. We did that. It was the first time I saw it in literal action, just flowing. And I went, oh, holy shit, there it is. And after that point, it turned and we became friends, comrades, shared. Now we were like in it together. It's almost like a type of trauma bonding, I almost want to say. It was interesting. I wouldn't say it's trauma bonding. I have to look more into that. But I'm beginning to doubt that trauma bonding is what it is. I really want to like examine trauma bonding now because I smell a logical fallacy. I smell a logical fallacy when I hear trauma bonding. So we then walked and we were talking and analyzing how our whole relationship that afternoon was, how we went from hostile toward each other to having that shared moment of sadness. And then we were on the same page. And I explained my relationship model of this is how we connect as humans is through sadness and pain, shared emotional experience. And In all of that, I started to explain my background, and it came out that, and this is the logical deduction he made. He goes, "So you're not just flouting an opinion." This is what it was when we first were in the coffee shop and I was telling him my opinion, and then he was giving me resistance and I became defensive. He called me closed-minded. And here we are, and I became very like, "Don't you dare call me closed-minded." So then outside when we were smoking and talking more, he was realizing, "You don't actually have a fluffed perspective. You actually have a perspective." And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" He goes, "When people meet people, everyone's got an opinion." He goes, "But we're all just repeating opinions. People are just repeating the opinions of their parents or their heritage. No one's actually doing any kind of work to get their perspective." "You are." I said, "Oh, yeah." And but at that point, I had explained how I had broken down my entire brain and rebuilt it around this ironclad fortress of logic just so I could function. And he explained that people don't do that usually. And as a result, when people hear another person's perspective, they just go in and attack it. And I said, I get that. People attack through debate and argument other people's opinion. Now, there are supposed to be, and there are, rules for formal argument and debate. We don't follow those rules. Most people don't. You have to study logic to know the rules of formal argument and debate. In fact, when my friend and I, my best friend of 17 years and I broke up, I had set a boundary of, if you want to talk to me, you're going to have to follow the formal rules of the rules of formal argument and debate. She refused because she wanted to insult me. She wanted to character assassinate. And when I said, no, you need to follow the rules of formal argument and debate, so she left. So I was talking to him about this, and he advised that, and I said, this is how I'm going to do it from now on when I socialize. I'm going to go in as the listener. I love being the listener. I'm at a point where I almost hate giving my opinion on things. It's great because now I have my podcast. I can give my opinion here. So when I'm out and about with people, I can listen. I don't have to like, oh, you need to hear me. I don't have the need to be heard because I podcast it, so I feel heard. So I don't have to get other people to hear me to feel the need of being heard. I'm going to say it again. Start your own podcast. It's amazing. So I explained to him, I said, I would prefer going in, listening to people's perspective, and that puts me in a learning and observation. And I love doing that. And then I can take it in and decide which parts are great for my perspective. And I said, my issue is when they ask me for my perspective. He goes, what you should do, just a suggestion, is say to them, look, I'll give you my perspective, but I have built up my perspective after tearing it down so that it now forms this massive logical network in my brain so that I am now able to function quite effectively in life. So to tear apart my perspective is to literally tear apart my reality, which leads to mental illness. This is true for everybody, in fact, not just me. And I went, that's really, that's solid. I'm going to clean it up a little, but it's an understanding that if you want to hear my perspective, it is not up for you to debate, pull apart, or ridicule. My perspective is not up for ridicule and criticism. If you have a degree in philosophy, science, psychology, and sociology, then you can critique my perspective. But if you don't have those degrees, then I'm not interested in your opinion of my opinion. That's it. And most people don't have the ability to respect or honor a perspective. So yeah, I'm really protective of mine because people are so sloppy and aggressive with them. And it's like, no, I know what a perspective is, which is why there's so many mental ill people around in the world. Which actually leads me to some thoughts I had last night as I was falling asleep, waking up this morning, is perspective health. I am going to talk to you about perspective health. Mental illness comes from your perspective health. Your mental health is 100% dependent upon perspective health. Mental health is a symptom of perspective health. I study perspective health. That's what I do. I do perspective health. This is where mindset is a branch of this, a very small branch. So I create perspective health. And I was breaking it down this morning and going through it. I have one case study where I have put her through triadic healing, which is perspective health. And after 5 weeks, it happened yesterday. I watched the comprehension click and her PTSD is gone instantly, which is what happened to me. So she's in the throes of, oh my God, this is amazing. And it is. And I was right there with her. And it is permanent because PTSD is just caused from logical fallacy. In fact, all mental illness is just caused from logical fallacy. So if you just put in the right logic, if you put in logic, if you basically wake up or poke at your subconscious mind's logic center, it'll do what it does. You just got to know how to give it a nudge. So once you give the subconscious mind a nudge, it'll figure itself out. I know how to do that because I'm a logician. So I basically took the psychology that I know and the logic that I know and prodded at her subconscious mind, and it turned it on. When that happened, PTSD gone. All gone. And yeah, I'm having a good time with it. I'm like recording the data and I'm putting it through in my dissertation and I'm going, okay, case study number 1 is these are the results, 5 weeks and PTSD is gone. And it was just a matter of doing the prep work to the case study to the subject prior to, okay, I just got to say this for humanity purposes. Due to confidentiality, I cannot disclose her information, of course. So I'm resorting to calling it a case study, and she is the subject. And this sounds so horrible and inhuman, but it's for confidential purposes. And at the same time, it sounds so horrible and inhuman, but it has to be this way. So this is just me acknowledging that she is a person, and it bothers me to talk about her like this. So I just got to get that out of there. So the subject basically reports like everything I expected, everything I discovered with myself was spot on with her. There was 5 weeks. We started in late September, so about 1 month. It was about 4 weeks of just prepping her mind with the right combination. Boom, boom, boom. I had like 3 things that I put in place. I had mindset, I had logic, and I had meditation, cognitive behavior, CBT, basically. So it was the mindset, and that's the manifestation is what I used for the mindset. What else did I use for the mindset? And I used positive affirmations for the mindset. And when I did that, I was actually working on the emotional mental environment, the positivity versus the pessimism. That's what I was focusing on with mindset. So I was looking to shift her over to a positive mindset. And I used manifestation and positive affirmations to do that. The meditation was the emotional management control. And then I used logic, which was the third thing that I used. The logic was the understanding so that her subconscious mind could see its own logical fallacy and correct it. And then we addressed false premise. False premise are the societal lies we are taught. Societal lies like humans are illogical, emotions are illogical, are actually false premise. When that goes into the logical center of the brain, when it goes into the cognitive core, the subconscious mind processes that data. Oh, you're behaving illogically? Oh, well, that's okay. And then it will keep you behaving illogically while logical things are occurring in your life on this plane, while other illogics come in and contradict it. It basically tells the subconscious mind that cognitive dissonance is okay and needs to stay. That's the problem. So false premise basically allows for cognitive dissonance. And that's the problem. So once I was able to remove that, the false premise, once we were able to remove those false premise, it completely clicked the logical fallacies into perspective so that the logic center of a subconscious mind was able to completely change everything and just correct it. As soon as that happened, it was instantaneous. Now, there was one other thing here that she did. She was alone because she had to meditate and think. Now, people don't want to be alone, so they push that off. The problem is when you are alone, you allow yourself to think. And if you are resisting being alone, you're not going to give yourself the time to think. You need to think so your subconscious mind can process logical fallacy. So it was a combination of the mindset with manifestation, positive affirmation, with the logic, with the meditation, cognitive behavioral therapy, coupled with the emotional management. And I was working with her on the first perspective, self-love. I wish I had a word for it because I feel like self-love is so inadequate for this description. And then I worked with her on understanding false premise, which allowed the cognitive dissonance. And then she had the alone time so that her brain was finally able to pick it up, plug in the right logical argument, and then it took care of it. So there it is. That's triadic healing. It is literally correcting your perspective through teaching your subconscious mind logic, like prodding the logic centers inside your cognitive core. That's it. So to see it work on someone else as effectively as it worked on myself, only this time it was with pure intention. It happened in 5 weeks. Now, I know I can get that down. I know I can get that down to less time. I want to shoot for 2 weeks. I want to be able to take someone's mind and just aggressively groom their subconscious mind for 2 weeks. And then, okay, now go be alone. But that's going to be my goal for me personally. But I mean, you can't complain about 5 weeks. Like I'm at a point where we're going, yeah, I think your therapy's done. Like, yeah, it's done. 5 weeks. We have to check on the subject's definition of love. That's the one thing that needs to be confirmed is the definition of love. Her boundaries are already in place. So her defense system is back up. She's already taking care of her fear system, and her cognitive core, or her subconscious mind, finally fell into position where it belongs. So now it's just processing data properly. She is building up the logical network inside of her mind to create the proper perspective. The fear system is calming down. She's learning how to soothe it. She's already gone over that with me this morning. So I'm watching the subject properly soothe the subconscious of the fear system beautifully. The only thing I need to confirm is how she defines love, because that is the only thing that might be remaining, and I have to go through that. That is dire, but that's more logical fallacy. Once I correct that, then the whole thing will fall right into place. And I already know which definition she has because I know what she's like. Once you figure out every mental behavior, every mental disorder, I hate that word, every behavioral defense has its own definition of love. Has its own definition of love. So depending upon which mental disorder you have, codependency, narcissism, or borderline personality disorder, you can determine what the definition of love is. Definition of love and definition of self-love, which comes in with the first ethic, and then the second ethic, and then the third ethic. So once you establish the first, the second, and the third ethic with the stages of growth, and you make sure that you have a solid definition of love, it'll correct itself. And the logical fallacy will just make the subconscious mind will take care of the logic 100%. It's just knowing how to use the subconscious mind to your advantage. So mental health is literally a symptom of perspective health. Nobody except me knows about this. Nobody except me understands this. So everybody is focused on mental health. I threw mental health out with psychology and went, you guys need to go to philosophy and study perspective and logic, because the subconscious mind is 100% built on logic and reasoning, which is what cognitive dissonance is. Cognitive dissonance was the clue. When I heard that word and I went, because this is what it was. This is the path I took. It was when I was in my own therapy and I wanted to know where pain comes from. Now, this was important. If you stub your toe, you have the subject, your toe, and you have the table. There's a relationship between the table and the toe. We're all familiar with this relationship. When physics happens and the point of relativity from the table to the toe decreases, your toe smashes into the table. That coming together, that union, is what sets off pain, which is a signal to the brain to say, you just had a union. So pain is a consequence of the union of the table and the toe. Where does emotional pain come from? Who's the toe and who is the table? Where emotional pain? Couldn't figure it out. So I took cognitive dissonance. Well, this is before I knew cognitive dissonance. I wanted to know where pain came from. So I went to my therapist and I'm like, where does pain come from? She couldn't answer me. No books could answer me. Not one. It bugged the fuck out of me because it was an anomaly. So I spent a lot of time trying to figure out where emotional pain comes from. And that is when I found out, it was actually when I was having a massage done. Yes, I was having a massage done in May. Was it this year? No. I can't remember. It was a massage I was having done. And whenever you get a massage done, they massage you and it feels good. And then it goes deeper and it feels uncomfortable. And then it hurts. And they tell you, if it hurts, let me know. Do you want me to go deeper? And some people love it going deeper. And then there's phrases like, it hurts so good. And I realize that there's a spectrum. There's comfort. And then there is discomfort. And when discomfort reaches the red and the yellow zone, it turns into pain. Therefore, pain is a surplus of discomfort. That's it. So what causes discomfort? So that's when I look back at the mental psyche and I realized that we experience discomfort when we are exposed to catalysts. And it could be anything from, this creepy person over here is making me feel uncomfortable, to a lot of different things. So I analyzed all the different things that causes us discomfort. And I was trying to figure out why they made us uncomfortable. And I realized it's because we have this logical, what is right and what is wrong. We also have what is and what isn't. And we also have definitions like, this is a friend, my parents love me. Words. Words with definition. And I noticed that discomfort happens when one of two things takes place. The first thing is your safety is literally at risk. But two, the emotional pain comes from the contradiction of words to actions. And I noticed with the contradiction of word to action, it was cognitive dissonance. That is when I found the word cognitive dissonance. And I noticed every time there was emotional pain, it was cognitive dissonance. Now, when I pulled the word, which was like easy peasy, because harmonic dissonance is a term that we use in music theory. So I'm very familiar with harmonic dissonance, which really hurts me. Thank you, Leonard Bernstein. Thank you, Stephen Sondheim. So cognitive dissonance is something that really hurts us. Harmonic dissonance really hurts us. And it's the contradiction. It's the dichotomy. There are some people who are so averse to dichotomy that we laugh at it. That's me. There are other people who are so averse to it that they ban it with rules, which is actually what the fourth perspective is trying to do, is minimize the dichotomy. And I noticed when I was doing my own healing that every time I had to work through trauma, I had to correct the definition and put the right word with the action. That's all it was. I loved my brother. My brother beat me. This was the big one. I love my family. My family loves me. No, they didn't. No, they don't. All my life, they told me they loved me. They just didn't love me enough. They never prioritized me. Love is actually what we prioritize. And that is the dichotomy. We love what we prioritize. And because we prioritize it, it's now front in line. They never prioritized me. They prioritized my brother beating me. They prioritized my obedience, conformity, and silence, not me. They prioritized their image, their reputation, not me. Therefore, they did not love me. Now, once I was able to comprehend that, realize it, process it, I'm fine. I literally, and this is overnight, I felt fine. So long as I was holding on to the wrong definition, the false premise, my family loves me, it was creating the cognitive dissonance. Actions speak louder than words. Cognitive dissonance comes from a contradiction of word to action. So if somebody you trust hurts you, it creates cognitive dissonance. They're my friend. They would protect me. My friend hurt me. You can't understand it, and you get into a logic loop. Your brain immediately goes, whoa, what's going on? And it's because you have a false premise, because your cognitive core has to process things logically, but it has a false premise. They are friend. They hurt you. That doesn't make sense. But they're my friend, but they hurt me. And it's because they are not your friend, because friends don't hurt. This is absolutely a logical proof, by the way. This is it right here. Friends don't hurt you. Sam hurt Jen. Therefore, Sam is not Jen's friend. That's logical proof 101 with formal argument and debate. You have your you have your premises. It's premise plus conclusion. False premise plus premise plus premise equals false conclusion. If you have a false premise, you immediately have a false conclusion. And that false conclusion creates cognitive dissonance. So you have to be able to process the definitions of words. And this is where we fuck this up. This is all that this comes down to. This is it right here. You have your word and you have the action. We put the words before the action, and that's the problem. The action needs to come first. Oh God, this is so much the core to the problem with the world. I don't know if I'm polyamorous or monogamous. I am waiting to take action while I determine which word best suits me. So I take on the word monogamy and I go do monogamy things. It doesn't feel good. I put on the polyamory name. I go do polyamory actions. It doesn't feel good. So I take off both. I hang up both coats and I go, well, now what do I do? Neither one of them feels right to me. Neither one of them feels good. So I started to reverse everything. I started to prioritize the action before the word. I turned my words into a consequence. I recommend everyone do it. When I started to turn all of my words into a consequence instead of the go-to action, basically you have the catalyst and the consequence. I love shit like this. You have the catalyst and the consequence. We've been putting the cart before the horse. That's it. We use words and then we do the action according to the word. But the problem is we're picking the wrong words. We are picking the wrong words. So we're miserable. And we don't think to change the words because those are the catalyst. So I don't use words. I go by actions. And then I either find words that fit my actions or I create my own words to describe my actions. But my actions are the ones that are gold. When I look at somebody, I judge them based on their actions and their behavior, not the words. Our entire society is built off of putting the word first. I'm female. I'm male. I'm binary. I'm luminal. Pick whatever word you want. I'm asexual. Now I have to behave accordingly. That's boxed thinking. Instead, do the action, do what feels right, do what feels good, and then figure out what words belong to you. This is called reverse engineering, and it's how you determine who and what you are. We are sitting at home. We're trying to figure out who we are. I say, well, you need to figure out who you are. Go do something. Well, I need the right word. Let's determine first what my word is, and then I know what to do. We use words as an instruction booklet to life, as if it's a map to tell us where to go and how to behave. But that's the problem, is we don't know if we're picking up the right instruction booklet. We don't know unless we do. So we have to do the action, try it out and sample it, and then we have to create this weird thing that is us and our preference. Then the words come along for whatever it is. And actually, that's when it becomes a name for what you do. If you put the word first, it's actually a label. That's the difference between a label and a name. A name is, this is what I am. I'm an oral historian. This is a word I made up to explain what I am because I got tired of people calling me a coach. I got really tired of people calling me a public speaker. I'm an oral historian. Now I can say that and people are like, ooh, what's that? Now we can talk because I don't have any of these words that are being fit onto me that aren't mine. People say, well, there's masculine and feminine. Not in my world, there isn't. People are gender fluid in my brain. There's a spectrum in my brain, and every person has this spectrum inside of us. So we are all the genders at the same time to our own varying degree. This is my logic. I have to have this in my head so that I make sense to me, so my partner makes sense to me, so all the gorgeous people in my life can make sense to me. So when I see a man dressed as a woman, a man dressed wearing nail polish but still wearing men's clothes even though he's really feminine, or a man wearing man's clothes but he's really feminine, and then there's me who's really exuding masculine energy, man energy, but at the same time I'm kind of wishy-washy all over the place with the, they, he, she, and then I got Bergen crammed inside of me, a 6'2" Nordic warlord. Like, what I have to have logical comprehension. So male and female, black and white, does not apply to my world because my world is filled with a bunch of transgenders, bio or gender fluid, and bigender. Or it's all over. All over. Like everyone in my life is LGBTQIA. It's wonderful. I love my life. It's all over. So the whole male female does not work in my realm, because my realm is made up of all the rainbows mushed together like Play-Doh at the same time. And the only logical comprehension my brain can wrap around that is, oh, we all have 3 genders inside of us at the same time to varying degrees. And now when I look at other people who go, I'm a man or I'm a woman, I see black and white thinking. I'm going, wow, I see that you are really gung-ho about making sure everyone knows you are a man. And the other extreme is making sure you are a woman. So now I see male and female as being black and white extremes on a spectrum. I call that trauma thinking, because I've done the psychological work and I understand black and white thinking when I recognize it. Everything is a spectrum, which explains why people who have expressed that, accepted it, understand that, embrace it, because they understand that everybody has 3 genders inside of them. And as a result, they're all over the place, because people are all over the place. Now, either you resist this gender spectrum or you don't, and you accept it. And when you accept it, you become like him, which is fantastic. Like, that's like, I love you. I love you. And that's the way it works. Oh my God, do I love him? It's such an amazing concept. But it can't exist if you're putting the word on somebody first. And it's why Native Americans, it's why so many Native cultures would not give a name to somebody until they had action to back it up. This is why. So once I was able to correct this in my thinking, I had a clean slate. It was a beautiful clean slate. And suddenly it was, well, what are my actions? I can do anything. And I did. And I went all out and I just explored and I pieced everything together. And suddenly I see this massive, massive coming together. And this just, it was just this beautiful comprehension of action comes first. And then we find the words to match the action. And if the words don't exist to match the action, well, then you need to make something up. So I am a logician, first and foremost. Then I'm a philosopher. But then I'm not a psychologist. No, psychology doesn't come into this. Psychology is a small branch, a very small branch of philosophy. What I am is an actress, theater, storytelling. That's where my whole story comes out. Now, my story has to be logical. My story has to be absolutely philosophical. My story has to be, but this is where all the arts come out. So it's like these massive, I've got this gorgeous realm. So that when I get on stage and I talk to people about logic and philosophy, I'm not a dry philosopher. You should never be. Plato didn't believe you should be, which is why they taught more than 50% of the curriculum in the University of Alexandria was theater-based. Because if you want to be a teacher, you'd better be ready to put on a play. Oral historian. And just like that, I know who and what I am. I am an oral historian. And an oral historian requires philosophy and logic. I am an author. And it's once you find your name, once you find who you are, you're set. But this is really it, is what is perspective? That was something else that he was like, I've got all these definitions in my head. Perspective is your imagination, your dimension, your reality, your truth, your point of view of the world. Now he started arguing with me about, well, this is defined by this and this is, and no. I can't hear it. I know that's what you think, because that makes logical sense in your perspective. That's great. But mine is a fortress. My perspective is a massive fortress that I have to absolutely have ironclad, because my sanity depends on it. My perspective is not available for other people to rip apart and critique. My perspective is not available for other people to judge It's not allowed. My God, this feels so good. No one else understands the logical network in my mind to preserve my sanity so I can function. Now, here's the thing. If a person is mentally healthy, they do the same thing. They build up their entire logical world around their own comprehension of the world. Becomes their logical truth. Suddenly, they have this solid thing that doesn't conform to anything. And the minute anyone tries to put something inside of it, it doesn't work. This is the difference between someone who parrots, someone who mimics, and someone who's an author. Someone who has the authority to define and establish and set down, this is the way it is. So, the question is, and this is really what I want to know, why do we think it's okay to rip apart each other's perspective and critique it? Who is going around determining that every perspective in the world needs to be ripped apart, dissected, and conformed to everybody else's perspective? Who is doing this? Because this is something that we talked about yesterday, where I stepped up to him and I said, my perspective is not up for grabs. It's not allowed. You can hear it. You are allowed to analyze it for yourself and use whatever pieces of it you want. You are allowed to take it and use it for yourself or throw it away. But you are not allowed to tell me that I am illogical, because I'm a logician and I have a logical network inside of my brain that is literally holding me together solid, because I'm logical. And if you start pulling it apart, I can sit down and explain all of the logical reasoning. However, a logical network inside of our brains consists of thousands, millions of data points. So, do you really have the time to sit down and listen to all of my data points to understand how and why my network is what it is? Because I can show you. But do you really have that kind of time? No. So when somebody comes to me after 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and they're wanting to rip apart my network of logic, and I'm going, excuse you, you think you have my entire logical data point in 10 minutes? You are in no position to pull apart, critique, or try and rip apart my logical fallacy that you don't understand, because you lack significant information to do that. When you start putting together your own perspective, you have this right. You have the ability to say, my perspective is not up for critique. Unless you want to sit down and get my full life story and my full comprehension of how sociology, logic, philosophy, psychology, and perspective theory works, then you really are in no position to... Love cats. Love cats. You're really in no position to kind of make any judgment. It's like the illogic of, it's like a sporting event. That's exactly what it feels like. Every time I watch figure skating, I love figure skating. And I don't know, I'm going to say it. What fucking dipshit decided to treat an art form like a sporting competition event? Who did this? Who decided to grade art? I watch them on the ice. I see them doing art and self-expression on ice. And these dip fucks come along and critique it and grade it with numbers. How fucking dare you? This is one of the many irrational behaviors of Wonderland, that they are grading self-expression like a competition sporting event. I don't like fast and speed. I get that. Those are numbers. You can metrically record them. But watching them give their opinion on who landed a triple axel better, I'm going, what are you doing? Like, I don't understand it. I don't understand it. I feel like to me, it's ballet. It is ballet on ice. And when I'm watching ballet, no one is sitting there critiquing it. I mean, yeah, I sat next to a critic once and he did sit there and critique it. And I'm like, yeah, I totally saw them like not land that. But it's art. Like, why are you shitting all over the art in the self-expression? I don't. I close the door in Wonderland. So, and that's really it. We have it in our heads that as soon as we hand somebody our perspective, oh, look, something I can rip apart, critique, and put my own spin on. No. So when I'm out in public, which is why, by the way, I have no chats on. This is really why I don't have the chats on, is because I'm telling you my perspective. You are more than welcome to hear it. But if you don't agree with it, well, that's fine. You have the ability to say, this isn't for me. End of story. Critiquing it and trying to convince me that your way is better, I have no interest in hearing it. None. Unless you can show me that you have a doctorate's degree in sociology, psychology, and philosophy and music theory. Then I will listen to your opinion about my opinion, because then you'll be my peer. So yeah, it feels really good, like suddenly solidifying this. These are my boundaries. I don't have to give people my perspective for them to rip apart. That was one of the things he and I talked about yesterday, is he called me closed-minded because I wouldn't let him critique my logic. And I'm like, no, that's not what my perspective is for. I made this thing and it's solid. And I use some really amazing things. It's my creation. My perspective is my work of art. It's my creation. It is my sanity. How fucking dare you challenge it or touch it or take it apart? If you were qualified, oh, absolutely. I'd love to hear your opinion, which is why my friends are neuroscientists. But having random people just pull it apart just because they're bored and they don't have their own life together and they lack a lot of education, I'm just like, what are you doing? Like, it's like a kindergartner walking into MoMA critiquing Picasso. And I'm going, what are you doing? You're not qualified. So I feel good about this. And I think everyone should be like this. I have a problem with formal argument and debate. And I think it's because people aren't good at logic. So they use debate as a method to, that's it. I think they use debate to find their own logical fallacy because they don't know how to do their own logic. I think that's why people look at other perspectives like this, is because they're trying to shuffle everything around so it makes sense. Hence their need to debate. Oh, that makes so much more sense. People look at pulling apart each other's perspectives because they lack logic and formal argument, because they lack philosophy. So when a philosopher comes along and throws it down, and people are like, oh, let's pull it apart. No, 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 no. Children, I'm a logician. Don't touch my shit. It's not for you to touch. If you want to touch it, these are the requirements. And then we're going to enter into formal argument and debate. You know, and I think that's what it was with my friend. She wanted to rip apart my perspective at a time that I was still trying to piece it together. So when you decide to do this, and this is it, this is like the growth process, you're just mushing it all together. And then you start studying logical and formal argument. And then you start deliberately, logically weaving together your perspective. Suddenly it's like, okay, this is now hands off and off limits. You're not allowed to touch my perspective because it's woven together through logic. But you've got a lot of people over here who haven't studied logic. So they're just throwing their shit around. And they're now wanting to throw shit onto my logical network of sanity. And I'm going, please keep your shit off of my logical network of sanity. I love that. Logical network of sanity. It's called LNS, my logical network of sanity. And that's just it. It is so fucking ironclad. I'm like, yes. So if people want to come into my world, I can hand them that and say, like, look at what I created. You can look at it. And if you have an opinion, don't really care to hear what you have to say. I'm literally going to just not ask or throw it away. I don't care. Unless you can give me information that's actually valuable. In order for that to happen, I need to listen to you talk. And it does happen. Yeah, I find that a lot of 60-plus-year-olds are really fantastic for this because they have things I don't have, so that they can present information about themselves and their life experience that I haven't experienced yet, that I can go, "Ooh, that's logical. Let me pick up that piece." And I cherry pick the logical parts and I put it into my perspective. That's what I do. I cherry pick. I'm creating a work of art. I love my perspective. And it's something I encourage everybody to do. Literally cherry pick and build your perspective. It's amazing to do, but understand that it has to be logical to you. And the minute you allow anyone to come in, now they're ripping apart massive pieces at the bottom of the fountain, basically your fountainhead, and the whole thing will fall apart. Now, we're not talking your opinion about cookies. We're talking about who you are, what you love, where you belong. These are things that when you rip apart, your sanity is on the line. You rip apart the wrong thing and you'll go insane. You will kill yourself in some instances. This is existentialism, which I've studied. So you have to have a fucking solid foundation. The problem is, I don't have any peers yet. I'm trying to find my peers. So I got a lot of people who are just throwing shit, wanting to pull apart or try to pull apart. And what's happening is they're just so illogical that when I hear what they're saying, it's the cognitive dissonance of what they're saying that just hurts. That's really what it comes down to. They'll say something and it's so illogical to my system that I'm like, the cognitive dissonance hurts. The contradiction of your reality comprehension is so contradictory to my logical network that it hurts me. I don't want to hear what you have to say. And I literally cut people off because their cognitive dissonance causes me pain. So I don't want to hear it. So this is a boundary that I have. This is very much something I have in place. And I'm going to say it again. Do this. Absolutely. This is boundary setting. This is what people don't understand about boundaries. People think that boundaries protect the physical body from abuse. No. Boundaries protect your brain from abuse. It protects your perspective. When you set a boundary, you're actually protecting your perspective from abuse. You're not using a boundary, so people are going into your perspective and just throwing shit all over the place, which is why most people are illogical, is because they take in illogical pieces of other networks that have nothing to do with their own all the time. That's called internalizing. That's the problem. Boundaries stop that from happening. I'm taking case studies, only 3. It's $500 a week. If you want to be one of my case studies, take a look below. That is my Linktree account. Contact me. If you want to join the Triadic Healing beta test, do so. Sign up. It's $150 a month, and it's for as long as you need it. It is a monthly subscription or it is an annual subscription. It is Triadic Healing in the beta, and it's literally me daily going through everything that is Triadic Healing for you on a daily basis. You get full access to me, you get consultations, you get everything you need to start walking you through the beta tests. It is a lot like the weekly consultations. Excuse me. The only difference is you're going to get a lot less attention with the beta. It's more of me just giving you the material and then you basically doing a DIY on yourself. But with the more one-on-one, that's the case studies. So if either one of those interests you, where you want either the beta triadic healing, that's there, or the case study. With the case studies, it's going to be far more intricate detail of me analyzing your progress and me taking triadic healing and tightening it up. And then whatever we get out of my case studies is what I then apply to my triadic healing beta with the Philosopher's Fountain with membership. So those are the 2 options available that I have right now. Go ahead and click on either one of those. And if you are certain that you want Triadic Healing in its complete form, it is available on my website. I have 3 parts to it: part 1, part 2, part 3. Part 1, each part is $5,000, and you have to buy it in a bundle. So whichever you want Triadic Healing, go ahead and take a look at that. Thank you so much, and may the kindest of words always find you.